Hiya, I'm Lily and today I'm really excited to introduce you to the Rare Earth Artisan collection. Now this is a fairly new collection from Rare Earth and it's absolutely stunning with a really lovely shabby chic and sort of vintage feel, and I think you're going to absolutely love this collection, so I'm going to introduce you to it today if you've not already seen it. So within the collection, very much like many of our Rare Earth collections, we've actually got 4 A4 sets of stamps. Now these are very high quality polymer clear stamps. So what you'll find when you use these stamps is that there's a lot of detail within these stamps and you'll get that precise fine detail every single time, and that's thanks to the lovely quality of these stamps. So I'm just going to introduce you to the 4 different sets that we've got within this collection and just show you the sorts of imagery we've got, because I think you're going to really love it. So as I say, we've got quite a vintage, almost slightly ephemera sort of feel, and there's lots of different smaller elements, and the idea is that you can mass different stamps to create your own scenes and your own compositions, which gives you lots of versatility with this set. We've not just gone with larger big scene stamps where you're only sort of shoehorned into doing one thing with it. You've got those options of building your own scenes, which is so much fun. So you can see within this set we've got lots of different images. We've got the chest of drawers, we've got the pram, we've got a few sentiments as well, which are all a little bit different. They're not your sort of traditional happy birthday or thank you. There's lots of different slightly quirky sentiments within there, so things like happiness is homemade that we can just see there. And as you can see, we've got this lovely frame as well, which you can use to build scenes, but what you'll also find is that some of the sentiments actually fit within that frame, which is really fantastic. So just framing your sentiments, you've got that option there. So you can see we've got things like the light shade. You could be masking that and placing that on top of your chest of drawers. So there's lots of options for building up your own compositions. Within this set, we've got more of an outdoor theme with the bicycle, so that doesn't have to be quite so vintage or shabby chic. It could be a lovely card to somebody who actually just loves cycling. You can see we've got a few of these frames, and again we've got sentiments that will fit within those frames, which is absolutely brilliant. You can tell this collection has been really well thought out to give you the most options you possibly can when you're working with this collection. You can see we've got lovely trailing ivy and flourishes that you can use as embellishments for your projects. So it's not just about the focal images like your bicycles and your lovely vase of flowers. It's about creating that whole card, that full composition from the background, the foreground and the finishing touches of your sentiments as well. You can see we've got some longer sentiments, sort of verses on there, which is really nice because you've got options of smaller and larger sentiments depending on what project you're working on. Now this set, I've got to admit, is probably my favourite, and that's thanks to this gorgeous dress form. Now that would be perfect if you've got a friend or a family member who's really into their sewing. That would make a gorgeous card for them using that gorgeous, beautiful vintage image. You've got the bunting as well, which works fantastically as an embellishment on all sorts of different types of cards. You can take that stamp out of this collection, use it independently with other Rare Earth stamps you might already have. You've got lots of different options there. The chair is really lovely as well because you can use the different flowers to embellish that and make it really sort of over the top, very decorative if that's what you'd like to do. I've also got another of these frames where the sentiments fit into there, and I just want to show you, excuse the fact that my stamps are a little bit well loved, shall we say, is that the sentiment stamp within there is not joined to that frame. It is actually separate, so you can mix and match the different sentiments into that frame without having to mask it, which is absolutely brilliant because it just gives you more options, which is always what we want. So lots and lots of different stamps within there, and something that's absolutely fantastic, and I think you'll love this as well because it really does make a difference when you're crafting, is that with the curtains we've got both the left and the right facing. So if you want to build up a window scene, perhaps you've got a window die, perhaps from tattered lace or any other manufacturer at all, you can use your die and use your stamps together to create a window scene, which I think would look really lovely. Finally, one of the really exciting sets within this collection is our background stamps. So it is an A4 stamp set, but it's made up of 4 separate background stamps. And these are absolutely fantastic because they can be used in so many projects, not just within this Artisan collection, not just with these stamps, but with anything at all that you've already got within your collection. So we've got this gorgeous Baroque design. Now you can use this as a sort of wallpaper. If you are using your stamps within this collection, you could have that as your wallpaper and then perhaps a chair sort of sitting in front of that and building up a lovely indoor scene. But it doesn't have to be a wallpaper, it can just be a gorgeous pattern to use on your cards. So there's lots of options with that. The script. Now I've got to say I absolutely love script stamps. I think they're so versatile, you can use them on so many different things, and it's just that extra little bit of detail on your projects that you might want. You maybe don't want a really heavy background, perhaps stamp that in a pale ink or even a second generation stamp, which is where you stamp your first stamp, so you ink up, you stamp off the page, and then that second stamp without inking it up again is your second generation. That gives you a really lovely subtle finish on your projects, and that is a fantastic technique to use with your script stamps. So lots of options with that. You can't read it as such, it's more of a decorative element, so it's perfect for any project really. We've also got these lovely little flowers, and they match in very much with some of the other flowers that we've got within the collection. So we've got that rose there as well, so they work perfectly. You can see that the collection flows, so it really is worthwhile having all 4 sets together, the whole collection, because you will get more versatility. You've got those options of bringing them all together, but of course still using them separately as well. And don't forget, all 4 sets of this Rare Earth Artisan collection are available to buy on crafting.co.uk at a fantastic price, especially for the quality that they are, because they are absolutely wonderful quality and they stamp just beautifully, which is what you want. You don't want stamps that are a little bit tricky to stamp because they're not brilliant. You won't get that at all with this collection. Beautifully made, beautiful detail, beautiful results every time. So we've got that lovely repeating pattern of those roses, and don't forget you could repeat that side to side, top and bottom. If you've got a larger piece of cardstock, you're not restricted to just having small backgrounds using this stamp. You could even repeat it across a whole 12 by 12 scrapbook page if you would like to. So it's not just about making cards with this collection, there's so much more you can do with it. Home decor, scrapbooking, making your own journals, your own memory albums, lots and lots of things you can do. Maybe even gift tags as well, maybe having your handmade card and your gift tag to match. I think that's a gorgeous touch, and I think recipients always really appreciate that. It looks very professional and very finished. Finally, our final set within, the final stamp within this background set is this wood grain. Now, as you can see, I really quite like this one because you can see it's a little bit stained, but yours will come in beautiful, perfect, pristine condition. No one will have used it beforehand, don't worry. So this is perfect for building up textures within your projects. Brilliant for backgrounds, and you can actually combine a few of the different stamps, building up layers within your projects. Lots of texture for that, but it's something that you can use with anything at all really. It's not specific, it's not gender specific, it's not age specific. Lots and lots of versatility. You could even be stamping that in black and colouring that in, perhaps with your ink pads or your ink Lilly alcohol pens if you'd rather. So that's that set. So as you can see within our collection, there's so many stamps. We've got 4 A4 sets, so there's lots to get your teeth into. But what I'd like to show you is how to create a really easy background using our lovely background stamps. So all I've done is I've taken a piece of white card. Now this is just a smooth cardstock, it's not really got a texture to it. And I want to show you that you don't even need an acrylic block or a stamping platform to create your backgrounds. So if you are a new crafter and you've not got as many tools and such a big craft stash as you'd like yet, you can get going with this collection really easily. And you don't need lots of fancy tools, but you can still create stunning cards. So I'm just peeling the back off there. Now you'll find these stamps are slightly sticky, as they are polymer stamps. So what you'll find is if you are using an acrylic block or stamping platform, they will cling to it nicely. If you're finding that they're not sticking to your stamping platform or acrylic block as well as you'd like, or as well as they used to when they're new, just make sure you give them a good wash, because there'll probably be a little bit of residue stuck on the back of the stamp. I find embossing powder is usually the culprit, but it could be anything at all. Just make sure you give them a little rinse under some warm water. warm soapy water and just leave them to dry naturally. So I'm going to use, I think, 3 of the stamps in this set. I'm going to start off with this beautiful damask pattern. So as you can see, I've used it already, but we've got beautiful fine detail within that stamp. I'm going to be using a lot today my Rare Earth Reactions ink pads. Now these are absolutely fantastic for building up backgrounds. You can also use them to stamp to get quite crisp detail. You can heat emboss with them as well, as long as you're pretty quick, as they are fairly fast drying, but you do still have enough time to heat emboss with them if you'd like. They are reaction ink pads, which means they are hybrid ink pads. They're a fusion of both dye and pigment ink, so they've got sort of a fusion of the properties between the two, which gives us lots of options. And they have quite a chalky finish, which is really nice and gives us something a little bit different. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my powder blue ink pad. I've got my stamp, which is sticking to my card already, and I'm just going to ink this up. Now I'm going to ink it up randomly. I don't want an even coat of ink on there. So usually I'd be taking the time to ink up all over my stamp, but in this case I'm not going to. I'm just going to take it in my hand. Your hands may get slightly mucky, but don't worry, we can always wash them. I'm just going to place it over a piece of cardstock. I'm not going to press it all down, I'm just going to press sections down. So you can see we've got a little bit of detail building on there, but not very much. So I'm just going to go again. I'm just inking up a corner now. I'm just going to stamp that down. And now this is our background layer. So we don't want it too heavy as we're going to build up the layers. So just inking up, picking it up in my hand, no acrylic block, as we want a really distressed finish. Just going to stamp this out a few times until I've roughly filled out the section. Use a few second or even third generation stamps as well to give you that really lovely diffused look. Now this is really easy to create. You could even be doing this with the kids. You don't even need an acrylic block. So building up a little bit of detail. This is my powder blue ink pad as well, which is a Rare Earth Reactions ink pad. So that's giving me a nice base to start and build from. It doesn't look like a lot on its own. We're going to build from there. I'm going to take now Cornflower Blue, which is a slightly darker blue. So we're going to start to build up a little bit of depth, a little bit of colour onto there. And using the same technique of just stamping without an acrylic block, so just inking up, not worrying about it being inked up evenly, because that's not the effect that we want, and just stamping out. And you can see a little bit more of the detail now coming onto there. So I'm just going to do a couple more just to sort of even it out a little bit, so we've got a balance. Another one down here, I think, and another one up here, just so that I've not got a lot of design in one place and an empty space in another. Just make it fairly even, but trying to make it quite random, which can be sometimes a little bit difficult, but it's going to look brilliant with this technique. So that's the damask stamp done with. So what I would be doing is actually be cleaning that in warm soapy water and leaving it to dry naturally. I'm going to take my wood grain stamp next, and we're just building up layers, building up colour, building up layers, different patterns to create a really interesting background. I'm going in now with my Rare Earth Reactions ink pad in Mochaccino, which is a lovely vintagey brown colour. And again, using the same technique, I'm just inking a small section up. And I have got a piece of scrap paper underneath just to protect my surface, as I don't want ink all over my table. And using the same technique again of just stamping very randomly in a very distressed way, just little bits just to give us that texture. And it's all about building up those layers and building up an interesting effect, an interesting background. Now the card, you'll see when it's finished that it's going to be quite simple, but you can use this as a backdrop, as a background for more elaborate and over-the-top creations if you'd like, mix and matching the more focal element stamps within the collection to create really stunning show-stopping cards. But if you've not got a lot in your collection and perhaps you've not got a lot of time, you don't have to do a lot with this sort of background. You can let the background really speak for itself and come to the fore. So I'm happy with that. There's a nice sort of balance there with the wood grain. You can't tell so much that it's actually wood grain, it's just texture on there, and that's what we want. We're wanting to build up textures and layers and not having those layers separate, have them all sort of blend into each other to build up a background. Now we're going to go in next with what is perhaps my favourite stamp, this gorgeous script. And we're going to get things going a little bit darker now. So I'm actually going to go in with a black ink pad next. And I'm using Memento. The reason I'm using Memento is it's a dye-based ink and it's pretty fast drying, because after I've stamped, I'm actually going to want to ink the edges. If I was to use something like a VersaFine, which is a pigment-based ink pad, it's quite slow drying. And if I went to ink my edges quite soon after, I could actually smudge that black ink, which is not what I want. So that's why I'm going with VersaFine, not going with VersaFine and going with Memento. So, inking up, using our black. Now, we don't want this to be too heavy, because otherwise what we're going to do is we're going to sort of bleach out the background too much. It's going to sort of blend into the background too much, which is not what we want. We want it all working together, nothing overtaking each other too much. So I've just inked it up very lightly. I'm just going to press down like so. So you can see we've got almost that suggestion of text rather than a full text background. So again, I'm sort of filling the page evenly, so if I've got a bit on that corner, I'll have a bit on the other corner, just to get that balance. Random, but not random. And then going in with a second generation, like so, and just all the time, just assessing where we are and seeing if we want, if there's a space that we need to fill, if we need to add a little bit more in, just playing it by ear. And it's very much up to you how heavy you make the background, whether you make it very subtle. The colours you choose are completely up to you as well. I'm quite pleased with that. I think that looks nice and full enough for what I would like. What I'm going to do finally is I'm going to take my powder blue ink pad and I'm just going to take one of my Rare Earth dusting brushes and I'm going to ink the edges. So just picking up some of that ink onto my brush and just using circular motions to ink the edges of my cardstock. Now what this is going to do is it's just going to take that harsh white edge off and it's going to draw the eye into the centre. And what I will do afterwards is I might add a little bit of the mochaccino as well, just to give it more vintage feel. So working in circular motions. Now these Rare Earth blending brushes are absolutely fantastic if you find that you are a little bit heavy-handed when you're inking your edges, because they give you that soft diffuse effect. So if you are struggling perhaps with your inking, definitely give these brushes a go, because they are really, really fantastic. And you can be more heavy-handed with them and still get a brilliant effect. You don't get those blotches that you can sometimes get when you're using your blending sponges. Now going in with a brown brush and a bit of mochaccino, I'm going to ink the edges, not going all the way around so as to keep some of that blue on the edges, but just to give it a slightly darker edge, almost a vignette sort of feel. So I'm going to draw our eye into the centre of the card. What you could be doing as well, as these reactions ink pads do react with water, you could get a spritzer and just spray a little bit of water onto there and dab it off, and that will give you a really nice diffused effect with the water droplets as well. So that's another option there. Add a little bit of ink in the middle just to take the white, the start white off there. And I think I'm pretty pleased with that. So we've created our very own background there, not even using an acrylic block at all. So we're just going to build this into a very, very simple card. So what I've got is I've got a piece of craft card which is slightly larger than my background. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some double-sided tape. Now this is finger lift tape. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this to the back. Now you could be using your wet glues if you'd prefer, or you can use your tape runners. Totally up to you, but I'm just sticking this on flat. Just peeling back the edges and folding them over, so we've got those two little folded back areas, and this is going to help me with positioning this matte layer. So just centralising that so it's in the middle, and because we've peeled back those edges but we've not removed all of the carrier sheet, that tissue tape carrier sheet, it allows us to just manoeuvre this matte layer into place until it's perfectly central. We've got perfectly even borders. When you're happy, peel one back and then anchor that edge down and peel the other one back, and you can see it's perfectly central. What I'm doing now is I'm going to take my card blank. I've just used a white card blank, but I'm looking at that now and I'm feeling it's too stark white compared to that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mochaccino ink again, and I'm just going to take that white edge off just by inking it. So always, before you commit to sticking something down, just lay it out, have a little look, see what you think, and you can alter it very easily. Whereas if you've actually committed to sticking it down, it's a little more tricky. And once you're happy with your composition before you've stuck it, it's quite a nice idea as well, perhaps on your mobile phone, just to take a little picture, just for reference, so that when you remove the pieces and you go to stick them back, you know exactly where they're going. Sometimes you can forget. You think, oh, I can't quite remember where I was going to stick that, but if you've got the picture, you know it's there. So again, working in circular motions with my blending brush. The reason being is that will give me more of an even dusting of ink. If I was to go back and forwards like that, I might not get such a smooth blend of ink onto that. So always try and work in circular motions if you can. Once you're used to inking, it becomes very much second nature. So I'm just laying that out now, and I'm happy with that. That looks, it ties in a little bit better. I've just added some foam tape, some 3D foam tape to the back of this. This is a 2mm depth, so it's going to give me a nice little bit of lift onto there. With the two edges again, I'm just going to fold back to give me that time to manoeuvre and position it into place, so it's in the centre of the card, and then just peel back like so. Now what I've done is I've taken one of the lovely frame stamps from the collection, and I've chosen a sentiment, and I've just used a black VersaFine ink pad on there just to stamp out that sentiment and the frame to create this lovely little topper. Again, I'm just going to lay that out, and I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking again, it's a little bit too stark, it's too white for the feel of the project, as it's got a little bit of a shabby chic and distressed feel. So I'm going to take my mochaccino ink again, and I'm just going to ink the edges. So all I've done is I've stamped that out using a black VersaFine to give me that really crisp black image. And because it was stamped a few days ago, I'm able to go in with my ink because it is fully dried now. And it's allowed me to get that lovely detail by using the VersaFine. And then what I've done is I've just fussy cut it out. If you are looking at this image and thinking, blimey, that's a little bit detailed, I'm not quite sure about cutting that out, that's absolutely fine, don't worry. You can actually take your rare earth images into your scan and cut and use your scan and cut to cut around them. Rare earth very generously allow us to do that. So if you do have a scan and cut and not too keen on fussy cutting, or perhaps you just don't have as much time to create this particular card, then you can use your scan and cut just to sort of fussy cut around your images. If you'd like, another option would be to use an oval die and just die cut it in an oval shape. That would work beautifully as well. So just making sure my card is the right way up. I'm just going to position that onto there, and I've got a little bit of foam tape on the back. Probably not quite enough, I'd probably add a little bit more if I was at home. I'm just going to peel the backing off, and then I mean you could go anywhere. It could go in the bottom there, the side, anywhere that you'd like, but I think I'm going to go for it top right just to finish that off. And that's a really, really lovely sentiment on there. The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today, and it's a really, really lovely uplifting card to send to someone. Perhaps you could even use these sorts of sentiments when you're doing your journals. Perhaps you're doing some sort of inspirational quote book just to sort of give you a boost when you need it. These sentiments would work lovely for that. And that is the finished card. So it's very, very simple, a very simple design, a fairly small card as well. You can see it's about 6 inches by about 5, so it's fairly small, but you can go a lot bigger with these stamps if you'd like. So we've created our very own background, not even using an acrylic block, just using the stamp in our hand, using lots of different inks, inking the edges, building up those layers, and then using the sentiments and the frames within the collection to add our focal element onto there. So you can see how easy it is to create cards with this collection. The Rare Earth Artisan collection is absolutely fantastic. I think you're going to love working with it, and make sure you check it out at crafting.co.uk.